All right, welcome back to Terra Invicta. And before I go into the episode proper, I just want to do a little bit of strategic rumination as we play on the next phase of the game. Where are we at? We've gone from scramble for nations to the point where we can do basic orbital defense, to the point where we can start being a little bit more proactive. If you think about this in terms of technological evolution, initially you can barely fight the aliens, then you can fight the aliens in orbit on your terms, where you can catch them with acceleration. But what we don't have yet is the ability to project power over long distances. What I'm thinking about doing, based on all the feedback, is going to Jupiter using the technology we have. And I'm thinking about it for two reasons. The first is because people seem to be supportive, and because Exodus, part of our goal was to build up a population such that we could support long-term habitation around different objects in the solar system, which means we need to lift the population around at least one of the Jovian moons to 50,000. Probably Callisto, because it doesn't have radiation, although Io is where we'll go first because it has the best resources and the aliens aren't there yet. And to put population there, we need to take control of the object, realistically. In terms of population elsewhere, we're making progress. Mars's population is at 19,000. We'll get it to 50. Mercury's population is about 10,000. We'll get it to 50. Although I don't believe we can actually build hospitals and resorts there, I'll go for the 50K population regardless. And Luna's population is currently 7,000. Long way to go, but we will get there. So going to the Jovian system makes sense. The other reason is Al-Ashkar is a very rich tycoon from the Middle East, which means if there's one thing he understands, it's going to be oil. At the moment, our resource shortage, our bottleneck, is actually volatiles. And if you think about where you want to get volatiles in the solar system, Io in this, I don't know if this is standard because I haven't seen enough random generations, Io is stacked with the two things that we need the most, noble metals and volatiles. Why do you need a bunch of volatiles? I'll tell you why, especially as our ship designs get heavier. If we look at like a dreadnought, we don't need any equipment, we just need to apply adamantane armor. Adamantane armor is built out of noble metals, 0.01 per ton, 0.035 standard metal per ton, but it's mostly volatiles. By cost per ton, adamantane armor is mostly volatiles. So if you produce a dreadnought with 100 forward armor, 20 rear armor, and let's just say eventually we get engines that can push a little bit of side armor, 5 side armor, that's a 1,000 volatile dreadnought. Plus the uses for HABs, which will continue slurping up more and more volatiles. So really the two things we're going to need a lot more of. Yes, we'll need more normal metals. We can get those anywhere. But the noble and volatile density for our project, that means going to Io. And then investing a lot of metals in radiation shielding because it's got a 4 times cost multiplier. So there we are. We've got to go to Io. How do we do that using our current technology? Because it's not great. And I think what we're going to do is we're going to do this in 3 waves. We're going to pull together an initial task force that goes there with existing technology consisting of militia ships, maybe 28, 30 vessels, whatever we can throw together with our current mission control cap, because we can't build a massive fleet. We need to use multiple fleets and admittedly for attrition potentially in order to keep things going within the cap that we have, although I'll keep trying to expand this. So we'll send a small wave of ships, probably get engaged by whatever the aliens have in the Jovian system, do as much damage as possible, and then follow that up with wave 2, which will be larger and again, mostly escorts and militia ships that is just intended to get there and defend a platform for a while. What we'll then want to reinforce that with is some defensive ships. So let's give up on the idea of being able to get 4G combat acceleration or whatever. We'll just design some bricks. Let's hide obsolete. We'll just design some absolute bricks of a vessel that have the delta V to get out to Jupiter in a reasonable amount of time while carrying a lot of armor and firepower, and then they can defend the station until local shipyards can come online. And then hopefully from Io, we can clean out the Jovian system, turn it into a resource extraction zone, and start dialing up the population for our house rule. The engine question on that, we can get there with light ships using H Orion drive. The extended range militia ships can get the 60 DV or whatever it is we want there to get to the Jovian system in a reasonable amount of time. In terms of getting there with the heavier ship, I think it's going to be the Poseidon Lantern. And we'll go through this in a minute. But a Poseidon Lantern with a terawatt gas core drive, the main problem with this engine is that it chews an incredible, not the lantern, we'll want the torch. we'll get the upgraded version of the Torch. Once we get that, this might be a go for the larger vessels. This thing's not going to have anywhere near the cruise delta V we need. But anyway, the upgraded version of the Torch is much more efficient, but it eats something like 6 fissile materials per tank. So we're going to eat into our massive fissile stockpile to get some big, heavy ships that can go out and defend Io. But that's really going to be Wave 3. So Wave 1, small amount of militia ships. Wave 2, a shit ton of militia ships. And then later down the track, Wave 3, lots and lots of heavy ships. I think that's the strategic analysis for the moment. That's like sort of our goal. Continue holding Mars, Mercury, and Earth, and there'll be some defensive operations this episode, I'm sure, while throwing together enough of a force that we can lodge in the Jovian system and then hold in the Jovian system. And when I say defending orbit, that includes from these yummy chunks of exotic material, otherwise known as assault carriers, that are on their way and should be here in September 2034. Okay, and that's enough setting. Let's jump into the episode proper. Welcome back to Terra Invicta, where for once we have a little bit of wholesome news and perhaps something very relevant to Exodus as they plan the, well, Exodus. We've had the first birth of a human in space. Apparently it was on Brenner Space, which I don't actually think is an Exodus facility. I think that might be a Resistance base. We can check. Yep, there it is. It's a Resistance facility. It's a Resistance facility out on an asteroid that's seen the first human born in space. But what it does do is, well, we don't get any prestige or anything from that. Every nation on the planet gains a little bit of cohesion. As you think humanity is looking at a recent space victory around Mars, a recent space victory around Mercury, and now a moment like this one. The spacefaring future of our species seems to be in good shape. I put a bunch of vessels into an upgrade cycle, as you can see. So the Minutemen are range extending as we speak. It won't take too long. I'm just cycling them through the shipyards and then rejoin the fleet so they can benefit from flag bonus. We are riding the absolute limits of the MC cap at the moment, but a few things should be resolving that issue soon. It's going to be an ongoing issue this episode, though, getting this cap up. We have a round of op centres that should finish on the 28th of August. I'm starting to break into new countries because we have a lot of excess control point cap, and we're going to have even more once we develop global ambition, which boosts our cap by a massive 40. So there is room to expand and start knocking the Protectorate and the servants out of their hidey holes and taking their mission control in the process. I've also noticed the Xenoflora is back, so I'm considering getting an orbital weapon pointed at Earth and starting to get this cleaned up. Unfortunately, we only have ultraviolets at the moment, so I'm going to have to design maybe a chance to test a new shitty engine, build a new Lancer with a shitty engine and get the green arc laser battery back online, or cannon back online, and start clearing up some of the Xenoflora, because it's starting to get a little bit out of control. No eyes on any actual aliens, of course, but we know the other factions are hunting for them, so if we do spot them, we'll see if they attract like moths to a flame. We'll also set an arrival time on another fleet that seems to be coming to play in low lunar orbit, due July 2035. So we have about a year until this arrives. What is this? 35 ships, 5 combat power, 5,000 combat power rather. Dreadnoughts, Lancers, battleships. This is interesting. This is interesting. I'll go through this fleet. I will label this fleet, but definitely we're not going to be decommissioning or removing any ships from Task Force Earth. In fact, we might even reinforce it slightly, because it looks like they're going to have another combat to deal with in about a year's time. I think we'll intercept that at Luna. The chance to destroy an additional 35 alien vessels, the chance to keep them off our allied infrastructure around Luna, and especially our infrastructure around Luna, which is, now that I think about it, actually, even though it's relatively small, it's just 2 stations, absolutely critical for our economic foundation at the moment, because it's our fiscal hub. These are our research universities in construction. These are our space hospitals. This is a whole bunch of space hospitals. This is our space-based healthcare system, because basically we're going to fund a solar system-wide war effort using for-profit healthcare. And I see absolutely no problems with this at all, as long as we can stop the aliens deploying weapons of mass destruction in order to destroy it. So that's what the fleet's for. Okay, Task Force Earth is reinforced. It's 14 ships, but it's overwhelmingly Lancers with a little bit of coil battleship and a few escorts in backup. as I said, might want to reinforce it in time for that other fleet to arrive, but we are going to have time to produce some heavy ships. So I will set that intercept, and as soon as the turn ticks over, I might commit some vessels to Earth shipyards. Because what's the current construction time? 274 days. So that would finish in time. So we have a couple of days. We'll plan our construction. We'll decide what extra lancers we might need to reinforce this fleet after I have a look at the alien task force, and then set a couple of ships to construct, even though we are squeezed on mission control cap, so that we have the right forces at the time the enemy arrives at the moon. Bingo. Thank you very much. This base is back with us. So we'll upgrade the colony core, and then we'll fix this interesting layout that they've got going on. But at the very least, we've immediately taken those incomes back on board. We'll upgrade that probably to a colony mining complex. Hopefully our own bonuses boost it. But I'm not going to say no to an extra 50 rares, 3 fissiles, and almost 200 metals a month before we upgrade it. Welcome back to the fold. I won't steal the resistance base. They are more than welcome to keep it. They'll effectively benefit from our protection. And 174 metal, 44 nobles a month. Sure, that would be useful for us, but I'm sure they'll put it to good use as well. Okay, I've created Task Force Latin because they light the way. They have 48.4 KPS. It's composed of basically all the Minuteman class escorts that survived around Mercury, refitted with extra fuel for their H Orion drive. So basically just lots and lots of nukes. Those Mercury Aggro Block 3s, those extended range monitors with the massive amounts of repellent, may as well burn it one more time. We're not going to use it in Mercury orbit. You can't get it by decommissioning the vessels. So we may as well use it to carry a shipment of nuclear torpedoes out to where we're going. And then finally, this is the Hummingbird. The Hummingbird has a fission platform kit. So when it arrives, it'll create a little outpost with a construction module, which will then create other outposts with construction modules and bases with construction modules and give us somewhere to fight from. Okay, the fleet carriers have completed their transfer. They are in Earth orbit. They will land in Terra on the 23rd of September, or they intend to land in Terra on the 23rd of September. But as we know, that won't happen. Because there's the intercept. The Langley leading the charge. So what have we got? We're going to have 5 siege coilers, 3 big lasers, 4 coil battleships, 2 missile ships, up against a battleship with, heavy plasma. Heavy plasma, some torpedoes, mag cannon, mag battery. So the torpedoes are the main dangerous bit. And the carriers themselves aren't overly dangerous. They're not meant to be. Most of that mass is their module, the army module. A lot of point defense, but the siege weapons will get through the point defense. So I'm happy to spend the missiles getting the Ocean Fury and the Consuming Singularity out of the way, and then we'll siege down the carriers, so to speak. We will engage. Apparently they're willing to fight. I think that's dumb, but, saves me propellant, and I'm very happy for that. Let's get to it. The main thing is not to die to the salvo of torpedoes, so we will go a shields layout for whatever it's worth. We will go with a not necessarily a maximum closing speed, because that will increase the amount of time we have to intercept their torpedoes. The torpedoes, I suspect, will come for the escorts, so I'll be ready to try and bail them if necessary, but the fact is the DV on alien torpedoes is so high that if they fire them, we're probably doomed. This battle is also probably simple enough that I don't necessarily need to worry about, that I can probably record during it without much risk. Okay, siege coils are firing. The question is, do I release the missiles at this point? I think the answer is yes. Just in case the siege coils don't get through. Okay, missiles have fired. We'll slow things down. Plasma is coming in. The plasma I'm not too worried about against the front armor of our ships. I'm also going to leave the big lasers on defensive for the moment because we just don't need their firepower against these capitals. I'll let the coils do the job. But I don't think they're going to send in enough torpedoes to actually cause anything lethal. Looks like the coilers are already killing these guys. The nukes will just finish them off. And then hopefully we get a retarget. Although the assault carriers have so much PD that I really doubt the torpedoes will make it through, which is one of the reasons why I was happy to spend them on the battleships to start with. And we'll just put everything, priority target, on that lead, the lead. We'll go into padlock. We'll maneuver if we have to. But as you can see, I think they'll hold point defense formation. These are not agile vessels. If I'm worried that we might end up going to the merge, then I'll maneuver lateral. I don't want to get into close combat with these guys because my side armour is made of paper. I am part of the one side armour gang. Because if you never get hit in the side armour, it isn't a problem, and it's a lot of mass that you save. It's another reason why I like having nuclear missiles in this force, even as we move towards lasers and siege coilers, because the missiles are a reliable oh shit button for swatting some of those potential flankers. Let's see how the coils do at getting through all this PD. That's just too much mass for you to deal with. Too much metal. Bashing through the front of the cascading vision. There we go. Switch the target to the Shimmering Fury. We are overkilling, but I'd rather overwhelm the PD almost at any cost. Sorry guys, but Earth is closed, and to all those troops in the belly of the beast, so to speak, too bad, so sad. Eat siege rounds. Oh mate, I wouldn't turn my side armour onto a siege coiler. That's it, I wouldn't turn my front armour onto a siege coiler either. But they can't run, they'll just die tired. The laser crews are, they're helping, but they're not actually doing any damage. I am happy that with the refits though, it's now much clearer which ships are siege ships and which ships are laser ships, because using that second module, ship model. I almost wish there were 3 ship models per design, just so you could make it easier to visually distinguish between them. But I'll take it. I'll take it. Please tell me that's an exotics haul. Please. Come on. 27.4. I'll take it. Thank you very much. That is almost our first exotics, and we have spent like 1. So I'll have to update my spreadsheet so I know what's coming in. At the moment, the only exotics I'm spending is 0.1 per large vessel for the extra 50% DV. Beautiful. Also, I'll take the 760 volatiles, 820 metal, 200 nobles, and all of those beautiful officer promotions. Because now that we have vessels that we're actually going to be keeping, officer promotions now actually matter. And I'll talk about officers more once we've got some promoted and we're getting ready for the engagement around the moon. But that was the perfect engagement. No losses, we didn't have to chase them, we didn't burn our propellant, we got a whole bunch of exotics, we can return home very happy, and there's no invasion of Earth. Perfect. And as if on cue, I think that's the end of the era.
I will report when my mission
I even had Araxis on the way to talk to humanity first. They're still pleased, like there's no hostility here, that the gap in resources is now so wide that the non-aggression pact and the intel sharing agreement with our old mates, Humanity First, is now null and void. That's unfortunate. Now, of course, we can still put more pressure directly on the servants ourselves, but we're no longer going to be able to illuminate them using our intelligence. That's unfortunate. Hans Castillo says, the threat from your organisation is too great to be ignored. Our mutual peace is over. Hans, I have helped you so much, mate. So much. I've given you so many bribes, but that's okay. What that means is as long as I keep bribing you, I can probably relieve you of your point in China. To make that happen, let's temporarily take China up to 20% unity. Let's drive this public opinion to the absolute moon, considering China's getting pretty full on MC anyway. There's only 30 more to build. And then let's relieve Hans of this 15 mission control point cap. If he's not going to use it responsibly, we will. And we're at the point we're fighting directly. So we don't need proxies as much anymore. The exotics are ours. DNA repairs is done. That's the first life extension technology, which is great because I believe some of our councillors from memory were getting a little on in years. Araxis is 68, looking pretty good for nearly 70. Toby is 60. Yeah, so it's those two that were starting to get towards the retirement age risk before the end of the game. This now improves their chances significantly, and if we can add another 10 years on top, even better. This is reminding me I should probably go to ground at some point, because losing experienced councillors at this point would be a nightmare. So I might go to ground at some point. Let me just stabilise a little bit more. and then set the groundwork, I
Wrapping up
think,
here.
for the extractive sector in China, then probably the national industries in Russia. There's a couple of humanity first points we can grab that are really, really worth it, and then we'll go back to grabbing servant points, probably Egypt, Pakistan is on the agenda. You get the idea. Mars can relieve the protectorate of the first of their Mars bases. We'll just check which one we want. Let's go protectorate, Mars, 2035, 2.9. Oh, that looks good. That looks good. All of these look okay. I mean, the nobles is good, but so is the volatiles and whatnot. I think we want all the protected infrastructure on Mars until we get something set up elsewhere. While we have the capacity for it, may as well take it. So what was the first one with the decent volatiles and water? Theodosius base. If you would be so kind as to go negotiate a purchase in person, giving Mr. Banerjee access to scramjet technology so he can build more boost for me to then take over will make him forgive the fact that in a couple of days,
Offering counsel.
if all goes as planned, there we are, another Mars base taken over. We'll upgrade that to a colony core as well and then do the re-engineering. Got to get these mines back up online. To get a little production happening just in the meantime though, what does that need? That needs... That means even before that happens, this should get producing. So there we are. And then we repair the Mars fleet. We're prepared to do it all over again.
We now have a spy in their ranks.
And so we can keep an eye on Banerjee's blokes.
Ready to sabotage.
I picked their sneakiest counsellor, or one of their sneakier counsellors, and decided to make sure he tells me what he knows. So we have someone compromised in the initiative, someone compromised in the protectorate, the resistance have someone compromised in the servants, so we still have full visibility, ironically now, of everyone except for humanity first. So let's not go too hostile, because I know Hans has some very good murder bots on staff, and my security levels are still being improved. This time, we'll hand him aerospike engines, and then schedule an assault on his remaining non-Demos base. I might decommission or transfer these off eventually if I am successful in getting a foothold in Jupiter or something like that, but for the moment, some resources using that is better than no resources. The alien fleet buildup is very rapid. They're up to 292 ships, 76,000 fleet power. It wasn't that long ago they were at 260. If we are able to smash this fleet, we'll punt them back to 260, although they will still be very, very high up there. I am chaining these mission control. I'm getting concerned a little bit about money, so I'm going to have to do some more station construction with that in mind. I'm not sure whether or not the economy of selling antimatter will work anymore, though 7,500 per unit is promising as a potential solution. It's just not an immediate solution. So I might throw up another mission control station, a money station, but I'm thinking it's becoming increasingly imperative that I do consider either A, massively extending the research pace so I can fight them sooner, or using the sort of localized brush fire war Jupiter approach. I am constructing more vessels in Mars, a follow-up wave. So there will be some reinforcements on the way. I just, I'm not sure about the odds for everyone arriving, but, you know, we'll see. The Resistance is willing to give me a chunk of change for H Orion Drive. We'll absolutely take that. And we're starting to set the stage in China. Sorry, Hans, but if you're not going to play ball, we'll play nice, but we're going to take your extractive sector from you.
Move close
Magnetic nozzles is complete, which means we have the chance of the Poseidon Torch. This is my earliest opportunity to get an engine that will actually allow me to start building some serious fleets and going and actually fighting, rather than playing defensively and letting the aliens just continue to build up, which is driving me a little bit nuts. Great, that gives us options. There's a few things we want, but I think anything on the way to Accelerando is important at this point. Do we have everything that in train? Mine and machine is happening. Let's go tech tree. Antimatter mass production. Fantastic. And then Accelerando. Yep, so everything's on the way there. So I'm feeling pretty good about this. Let's check if there's anything else we're going to need for the engine. Antimatter propulsion, I think we're in the clear. I think we're doing as much as we can to get antimatter engines going, with mass production being the next step. So we can afford a little bit of a free pick. Fleet logistics is a big one, simply because it'll allow us to reduce the mission control cost of our fleet by 15%. It weakens a whole bunch of bad events. It unlocks the Tier 2 command center. And it's on the way to Titanic spacecraft, which is good. And then civilian complex independent habitats. This is a discount for HABs in terms of mission control usage. Civilian complex is the way we're going to hit our population goals. That's what I'm building a boost for, because I'd like to be able to up the population on Mars so we can support the things we said we were going to support under our house rules. I think we grab fleet logistics first. Minor machine is done. Booking in Accelerando. That's another 150,000 point research item, because we need this one and antimatter mass production in order to get the serious one, which is the super colliders. The reason I'm pushing the mass production ahead of Accelerando, both in terms of bonus and in terms of priority, is because we need mass production technology to then get the super collider, but we also want to get started on the bit after that, which is the actual engines. And to do that, we need this technology, but not this technology. So it's a slight optimization effort. That said, Poseidon Torch has popped. It is in the queue. We'll get it in July 2036 unless we can scale up our research even more, which I'm working on. I'm about to drop Marines onto Luna, Caesar's servant base there, because it's an area where we're allowed to build research universities. So Luna has gone to actually be quite valuable territory. We'll have some research universities here finishing in a day. There are already some going up, so this will be another 400 odd research a month. But if I can slap down another 6 or so research universities at the former servants base, that would be a significant boost. Another 10 costing 20 mission control and 1,000 cash a month would be ideal. But yeah, I've got money production in train, but this is starting to look, I'm running a sustained deficit here, and I'd like to balance the books at some point, even though we are sitting on a significant war chest. As I go about some serious economic rebalancing, there's room for diplomacy to help fill the gap. Volatiles is emerging as a serious problem because the amount that's now being absorbed by my healthcare facilities and also by my research labs, research universities that are starting to come online. So I am looking to boost this. I should be able to push this back towards 800, 900, close to 1,000 a month eventually with some upgraded mines, some sieges, etc. But being able to grab an extra 1,000 here, 1,000 there in exchange for basically free technologies off the likes of Soren and the Academy, and some money to help keep me afloat. Absolutely not against doing it at all. We want to we'll give him the heat sinks. We'll give him the laser engine. Not sure I want to give him Marines. I'll give him a functional drive. There you are. Neutronium microvision drive, and then we'll trade again next turn, stabilizing this until the money production stations come online, because we're currently losing 2,000 cash a month, because such is my way, apparently.
I will help them.
The new ships for Task Force Earth are pretty much all in place. I'll check that we have them all. Also, the Overwatch force is back bombarding Earth. Another wave of militia ships. I'll join up the 2 waves of militia ships at Mars, and that will become wave 2 for Jupiter, just because the aliens are building, and I want to do something even before I get Poseidon finished. 337 ships and counting, which means at best I can kick them down to like 300 again if I smash Lunar Force, which will still be a net gain for them. But hey, my technology is advancing and my infrastructure is jumping all the while, so it's not entirely catastrophic if the aliens start to build away from me. I just like to start pruning them and farming those critical exotics. Is there anything else in the Earth sector that we are likely to need? That's all Mars construction. It's all Mars construction. The Earth shipyards are looking clear. All right, Earth shipyards are looking clear. So we find Task Force Earth, 36 ships, 5.8 combat power up against an even number of alien ships. And what we're going to do is we're going to send them to Luna. All right, the aliens around Jupiter are taking the bait on wave 1. Looks like they'll be intercepting basically as soon as we arrive. There is no way to win this. This one, I don't think we can miracle this. We'll see what auto-resolve says. We'll see what manual says. We've got a lot of nukes. We can inflict a lot of damage, which is good. But 36 ships, 12k combat power against 36 ships, 4k combat power, all of which is missiles. against opponents that are going to have, there are a lot of laser ships. I think we'll be able to inflict a lot of attrition. I think it's very unlikely we win. That said, who knows what then happens for Wave 2, which is forming up around Mars, and we'll arrive in about 11 months' time, and there'll be more waves and waves and waves as long as we can afford that, because using the H Orion drive, we're basically only spending metals, nobles, and fissiles, very little of our water and critically very little of our volatiles. So we can maintain the pace. Any source of attrition, really, that keeps their attention off the inner solar system while I get the critical drives I need to get my heavier combat ships out to Jupiter in a serious way, or out into the belt to attack their mining infrastructure, either way. Okay, here we go. Task Force Lantern, and it's 36 missile boats up against Alien Fleet Victor 23, including some serious stuff, 25,000 tonner, 18,000 tonner, 20,000, 20,000. Yeah, there is some big, painful stuff here. All right, first of all, let's see what Auto-Resolve thinks. Like I thought, absolute, complete smash. Let's see what we can do manually. Okay, there's a couple of ways to play this, and I think the one we're going to go with is the most basic. It's the one we know. It's the Mercury maneuver, where we go full speed ahead, and then after we've got a little bit of velocity with our H Orions, we task all of our missiles against the various targets in the body. We sail. We potentially start to disengage at that point, but for the most part, the escorts become, shall we say, distractions for incoming enemy fire. And we see how much damage we can do to this force on our way through, so that the troops that come afterwards have better odds. It does feel like a bit of a humanity-first maneuver, but until I get better technology, this is the option I think I have for keeping pressure off the inner solar system. So, let's burn. Stand by to light. First hydrogen bombs will go out the back now. Aliens will be firing their ordnance, and we want to time it so we get all of our missiles in the air. Great. And at this point, the allocation game begins. And it's probably a case of allocating such that, ideally, the missiles are being fired against nearby targets. I'd like to get the big stuff. It's also the stuff that we're least likely to get. No reason not to try. All right, I'll come back in a moment once I've allocated my missiles. Okay, I think we can take it off pause. Wait for all the torpedoes to empty. Maybe go slightly evasive, just to increase the amount of time that the... something like that. Although we've got so much slanting forward momentum now that the chance of evading any mag rails is pretty minimal. Casualties will be starting about now. Missile salvos are away. This is a much, much better prepared alien force than the one we encountered around Mercury. Nuclear detonations. Looks like we have some survivors on both sides. Unfortunately, it looks like the shimmering pulsar is going to survive. Most of our remaining ships are probably dead in the water. We can give them disengage orders. They will be re-engaged after the battle, though, is the only problem. And the colony ship, unfortunately, does not have access to a nuke. What we could attempt to do is disengage and then see if we can at least get the platform up, just as a proof of concept. I think that was a fairly mutual exchange. Unfortunately, we didn't get everything, obviously. I think we destroyed a lot more tonnage than we brought. So if we can repeat the exercise, as dark as that sounds, we might actually be able to make a foothold next time, depending on how much they reinforce it. But if we just continue this until the antimatter or Poseidons come online and we can send something more formidable, this is making a dent. This is absolutely making a dent. Let's burn out of here. They're trying to pursue. Hopefully I can get the distance on them. Because they've got the DV, I just have the acceleration. No, I think they're going to catch me. Ah, well, there was an attempt. And there we have our results of the battle at Io. That is a square. It says victory for the aliens. But other than not getting any exotics because of the scale of the engagement, this is a sterling human victory. This is a victory in the tradition of great human military victories, for better or worse. Because we're applying... I only wish the crew counts on these things were like 2 rather than 29. But on the scale we're talking about, oof. Because if you're trading 32 human escorts for 28 alien ships in much larger tonnage ranges, this war ain't in the long term going to go so well for you. And now we are jumping over to a major engagement around Mercury. This is a big one. We have an alien Titan, the Burning Leviathan, on the field. They appear to be set up in some sort of wedge formation, and you can already see the flankers. In this case, flankers looking like they're going to go underneath our fleet. So we've got a fairly standard composition here that you should have seen before. This is Task Force Mercury. So it's a mixture of missile escorts and some of those larger Jacana and Pelican class vessels. So we've got some siege coilers, some large lasers, and a whole bunch of missiles and monitors. What we're going to do is basically try and make sure that the flankers don't get into that vulnerable underbelly of our formation, because we do have that one side armor. So I'll allocate a bunch of torpedoes off early. In this case, I'm using one of the monitors to do it, dedicating to that job. It does have ECM, so I'm not too worried about getting jammed, which means I don't need to allocate one ship per target. I can go around with 1 or 2 monitors and assume that I can cycle through multiple alien vessels without getting ECM'd in the process. I'm going to assume at this point that one torpedo... 1 salvo per target rather, so 3 torps per target from 1 or 2 monitors should be enough to hit reliably through whatever their nose laser or combo is. And then we're going to go for the slow drift into the rest of the formation once we know the escorts have been dealt with. The siege coils you can see are already firing, and the idea there is those coils, even firing from this distance, will serve an important function, which is sucking up a lot of that alien laser fire pretty early on. It's then going to be a question of picking the right time to release the missiles, which I start doing now. So let's just speed that up, because the idea is the siege coils will start eating up PD, and then torpedoes will arrive. And the goal here, I think, I'm looking at this formation, the closest part of the formation is the center. So instead of working left to right like we did in the past, I'm going to try and tear out the middle of the alien formation with the missiles, use that surge of firepower to eliminate those, then pick off one side with coils and lasers, and then finally focus on the remaining flank, so to speak. But the idea is, because they're relatively closer, I actually identify the middle component as the most vulnerable, and that's where we're going to use the extra missile-provided surge of firepower against initially. Okay, everything is allocated and the torpedoes are about to fly. The first concern is to make sure that while lasers can do a decent job, we don't have a huge number of them in this fleet, so the hope is the torpedoes do a decent job on the flanking force. Although you can see those ultraviolet lasers going out and taking out 1 or 2 of these escorts, the hope is the torpedoes will do most of the work. And as you can see, impacts, almost all targets neutralized, more torpedoes coming in there. And with their single lasers pretty much done. Now the attention focuses to the center part of the alien fleet. I've concentrated. All the torpedoes are going out in one massive salvo. We're not splitting it up into 3 or 4 different shots here. Everything is emptying. Everything's going for the center. And all the missile boats will then disengage, just in case, the worst should happen. We do want them surviving, if at all possible. Although the hope is to win this battle, obviously, because if we don't, it might lose us some Mercury infrastructure. But in the worst case scenario, the missile boats can disengage, reload, come back for more. just do some final adjustments here to make sure everything's bugging out that needs to bug out. I keep the monitors in formation because they do have point defense 40 millimeters. And then we just watch the missiles go in and see how much damage we do in the center. And as intended, we do eliminate a lot of the big stuff. Titan is gone, a lot of the battleships are gone. The heavier fleet elements the aliens put in the center of their formation, that's all been just torn out, leaving this giant gap, which is going to make it easier and easier to get into the flank of the alien formation as we get closer. The subsequent torpedoes were designed to sort of work their way out. So the first torpedoes to arrive are the ones in the middle, and these working their way out more to the flanks. So basically, the more successful the salvo was, the wider the hole would be. And as you can see, we've got a pretty wide rent torn through the alien formation here. Last of the torpedoes should be arriving. There's still a lot of PD on the field at this point, which is fine. Even if we don't get kills, though, damage to the remaining vessels should make it safer for our fleet to get closer, which is where the coils are going to become even more lethal. The closer we get, well, our smaller coils will begin firing as well, and the less of a window there will be for the aliens to intercept what is coming in with PD. That said, I'm fairly optimistic we might see at least some results off these last torps, although the salvo is pretty much bleeding out at this point. But I think we have reason to be happy with how much damage was done with those torpedoes. I think the fleet's main weapons, the coils and the lasers, can probably deal with most of what's left, as we can see from the last few explosions. The siege coils are really, really, really dangerous. They're just slow to work because they're slow to switch targets, they're slow to arrive, and then you need several to arrive in a row to get through PD and do lethal damage to a vessel. They don't provide that surge in firepower that the torpedoes do, but they are fairly consistent. Now, you can see here why I want to now eliminate one side of the formation before the other, because just as we can now fire on their side armor, they can now fire on our side armor. So I decided to point a lot of the coils to the left, and then a lot of the lasers to the right, because I see the right as more weakly armoured. I can get into their side armour. And while we'll fire some Siege Lancers over at this side, my firepower apportionment is going to be left-weighted for the slow stuff, right-weighted for the quicker acting weapons, so to speak, in the hopes that we can eliminate those last three vessels fairly quickly and then focus on that left-hand side without exposing any of our pretty much non-existent side armour. There we go. We're already down to just the Autumn Storm and one other. And the lasers are doing a great job. These good old Pelican ships. I do forget to take one of the Pelicans off Guardian mode, so it wastes a couple of shots on magnetic rounds. But for the most part, they've been doing good damage against opposing vessels. You'll also notice that these coil battleships with the smaller batteries, as we get closer, they can contribute their smaller batteries into the mix, not just their big forward-firing cannons. So at this point, I think we're pretty much in the cleanup phase, with the exception that we just need to eliminate those last two alien ships on the right, which we are in the process of doing, and then we can padlock the entire formation to focus on the vulnerable side armor of the enemy ships on the left. If they tried to disengage, like if they tried to maneuver at this point, one, they have the DV problem classic to alien forces when they come to Mercury. The other problem is if they try and disengage, they're going to turn side and rear armor to us, which means they'll basically instantly die at these sort of ranges, especially to the big lasers we still have on the field. So it really is, at this point, just a matter of time. Moving forward, you can see, this is what I meant. As we close, it's going to be harder and harder for them to keep the side armor out of the firing range of whatever ships on the far side of the formation are. So as long as they keep up to date with the padlocks and the manual targets, we're going to get more and more shots into vulnerable side arcs. And as you can see, the right-hand side of the screen is basically clear of alien ships at this point, which will enable me to then pivot all of those ships on the right face left. And if the aliens do turn to address that new flanking fire from the right-hand side at the starboard side of our formation, they're just going to expose their side armor to the lasers that you can see positioned on the far left of the screen of our formation. So it's basically a no-win scenario. Once you've rolled up so much of a formation like that, blown out the center and then removed the remaining flank, this is a turkey shoot at this point, and I'm happy for it. You can also see we are now so close that the 40mm is filling the void as well. Not going to do a huge amount of damage, but one small bonus to keeping the 40mm active even into these later stages of the game is you do have that extra auxiliary close-in weapon that can't be impacted by any form of point defense. And if they do expose side armor, or you're against a very light vessel, or the closing velocity is very high, you'd be surprised by how much damage 40mm can do, because it benefits from relative velocity the same way every other kinetic weapon does. At this point, though, basically clean up. I have been very impressed with the work of all the components in the fleet at this point, I'm happy with how the arms are working together. The torpedoes give you that initial surge. The siege coils set conditions. They start eating up PD. They impose like a baseline level of demand on opposing point defenses. The torpedoes then provide you surges of firepower when you need it. So you can choose moments where you break through the PD, which is strained by the coils, in order to pick a section of the enemy force that you want to delete, but you don't have the ammunition to do it to the entire force. But you do get that surge of firepower. Then, once you've opened up the formation and exposed a lot of it using the coils and the missiles, lasers work incredibly well whenever you can get the opponent to expose their side armor. So they kill flankers really well because flankers have to burn, which means they tend to expose weaker armor. And also in these sort of situations where you can put ships on the flank, those UV arc lasers do a great job of burning through the remainder. So the synergy between coil, UV arc laser, and nuclear-shaped torpedo really working well for us so far. I think the torpedoes will be falling off more and more as the game advances, but we still have a lot of them available and they're quick to throw together to augment the larger ships that take much longer to build. And that's the other real advantage with this fleet composition, right? Yeah, you can put a long-term investment in the lasers and the siege coilers. There you are. Here's the result. 40 exotics, basically wiped alien fleet. Mercury threat pretty much gone. Wasn't that much of a threat in the end, it turns out, because we had the right fleet composition. Huge number of officer promotions, 29 ships destroyed, 40 exotics gained, Task Force Mercury, once again, standing victorious. And so with that threat eliminated, we're now getting closer to the point where our next engagement should actually be offensive. Task Force Floodlight, which is a very, very large force on its way to Jupiter, should arrive at Io. And the Hydra are going to have a choice. Do they try and battle the 70-plus ships of that force that are going to arrive, given the experience they had with the force less than half that size before? Or are they going to allow us to entrench in the Jovian system? And so because it's become a bit of a tradition to end episodes wherever possible with the Battle of Mercury, that's where I'll tie things together here. And so we'll return next episode for the arrival of Task Force Floodlight and the true beginning of Operation Io Liberation. Because the volatiles must flow. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you then.